light weights build more muscle than most people think. What determines whether the weight is heavy or light? A couple of things. One, the rep range that you're in. Assuming we're training to failure, or damn near close, you should be, then the amount of reps you do plus the tempo that you use is going to dictate whether or not we will classify the weight as heavy or light. For example, if you choose a weight, a relative weight, where you can get 15 reps slow and controlled, let's call that light. Conversely, if you choose a weight that you hit failure on the 6th rep using a faster, more explosive tempo, let's say that's a heavy weight. Generally speaking, higher reps, lighter weight. Lower reps, heavier weight. Slower tempo, lighter weight. Faster tempo, heavier weight. Now, in my personal experience, whether you choose a combination of rep scheme and tempo where the weight is heavy or where the weight is light actually doesn't matter that much. What's more important is, are you progressing within any given style or structure? For example, if you choose to train with light weights where you do 15 to 20 reps per set and you use a slow controlled tempo, relatively that total amount of load that you're going to use for any given movement is much less or lighter than it would be if you used the 4 to 6 rep range with fast explosive tempo. If you take the same exercise and you just change the rep range and the cadence, the tempo, you will immediately be using substantially heavier weight. So if you're the type of lifter that uses lighter weights, i.e. higher rep ranges and slower tempos, I believe, from what I've seen, you could see just as much muscle growth as the person using lower rep range with a faster tempo, i.e. heavy weight, given that both rates of progress are the same. If you're in that higher rep range with the slower tempo, and from 1 week to the next or 1 month to the next, you add additional reps until you get to the top of your rep range. In this case, we're saying the rep range is 15 to 20. Once you can get 20 reps on your lat pull downs with 70 pounds on the pulley, and then you bump that up to 80, the reps drop back down to 15, and you continue onward in a theoretical ideal scenario where progressive overload is happening consistently. That's what we want. That person, compared to the person who's lifting much heavier weights, let's say for the same lat pull down, they're doing 100 pounds on the pulley for 6 reps to failure, using more explosion, coming down fast, not controlling the eccentric as much. If they, from week to week, month to month, progress the weight and reps at a similar rate to the person lifting lightweight, in my experience, you're going to gain the same amount of muscle. And this is why, part of the reason I believe that there's so much conflicting information as to what's the best style or way to train. And you can look at different individuals with different training styles, both with success. All the different, bodybuilding champions, there's so many different styles to lifting. Some of them lift really heavy with faster tempos. Ronnie Coleman. Some of them lift quite light with slower controlled tempos. Nick Walker. Both dudes are massive, because I don't think the heavyweight versus lightweight, high reps versus low reps, fast tempo versus slow tempo has anything specifically inherently beneficial that directly leads to muscle gain. I think whatever style or structure you work in where you can see progress over the months and years is what primarily leads to muscle growth. And there's a lot of discussion as to less than 8 reps, you're going to get more muscle growth. So meaning a heavier weight, potentially with a faster tempo, moving more load, you're going to see more muscle growth. Or somebody else will come along and say 15 to 20 with more sets, more volume, lighter weight, slow and controlled, you're going to see more muscle growth. And both people oftentimes are right to a degree, given that you're seeing progress. Either of those styles or methodologies without progress are equally ineffective as well. In my experience, having experimented with a lot of these things. The one caveat that I'll add, and this can be individual based, I'll say for myself, typically I find the fast, explosive tempo of lifting in the 10 to 15 rep range. So, fast tempo, but 10 to 15 reps, that's not really low reps. Let's say moderate rep range with relatively heavy weight for the triceps. The most I've gotten for the dumbbell extensions behind the head is the 140-pound dumbbell for 13 reps. For the standing easy bar curls, the most I've got is the 135 pounds total for 14 reps, using a fast, explosive tempo, moving, relatively heavy weight. I've seen that style of lifting to be more conducive to progress over time. And a lot of people will say, oh, you're just getting stronger because you increase the tempo, the speed, and if you slowed down with that same weight, you'd do less reps or you'd have to lower the weight. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that having that style of lifting leads to a faster rate of increase over time, as opposed to the extremely slow, controlled style of lifting. That's just my personal anecdote. I encourage you to experiment with both, and I'll finish by stating that I still think both or multiple styles are effective. And I will do some of my training with lighter weights and with slower tempos. And this brings us to the point of not attaching yourself to any one ideological way of training. It's very common to do that. And the reason that I would caution against it is because you're more likely to stagnate. It's potentially going to hinder your progress to cement in your mind that I use a slow tempo in light weights, or I use fast tempo when I try to move as much load around as I can. I think different styles are effective at different times. And I think if you're continuously pushing really heavy weights with a fast tempo, like I have been with my arm training, I think also supplementing in there in the same workout, a couple sets, or shifting to a different style for maybe a month where you slow down. Slow the tempo down, drop the weight a little bit, use more control, you'll have more mind-muscle connection, and establish more, like kind of you're cementing the strength gains, in my experience, that I see from the more explosive stuff. If you just keep pushing the more explosive, fast, wait for years on end, I think your chance of injury will go up, and I think your ability to have good mind-muscle connection and get more out of the additional progress you see goes down. So I think at least having some of your sets where you let go of the ego of lifting heavy and lighten the weight, use a slow controlled tempo, and feel a good stretch and a good squeeze, move the muscle rather than moving the weight. Conversely, if you're somebody who is really into slow tempos and lighter weights and squeezing, I think you will drastically benefit from doing some of your sets or transitioning into a 3-month block where you let go of that and you focus more on moving the weight, you focus more on adding strength, using a faster explosive tempo, using some potentially lower rep ranges and lifting a little bit heavier. Ultimately, we can clearly see that many different styles of training are effective for producing muscle growth. So the takeaway message I want you to look at is I don't think that there's anything extremely inherently beneficial of high reps versus low reps, or heavy weight versus lightweight, or fast tempo versus slow tempo. Although in my personal experience, I've noticed slow or fast tempo to be better for me, but I'm not going to say blanket statement that everybody will have the same experience. I think you should try both and see what happens. But I think what's more important is that you find a style of training where you can progress. And in my case, I found the faster explosive tempo to lead to a much more significant rate of progress than the slower tempo. So to each his own. You need to experiment with both, but the key thing to focus on is that many different approaches with rep ranges, total poundage, tempo, as well as rest time in between sets, total amount of sets done. There's a lot of different ways to structure your workout. Those details are not as important, and you shouldn't fall into the trap of, 7 sets is the magic number for muscle growth, or 18 to 20 reps is the it's whatever style you do, you bring the intensity, train close to failure or hit failure, and then you have to progress. Whether you're training slow, fast, heavy, light, a lot of sets, not many sets. You have to find a way to increase the reps, increase the weight within whichever style you're training with. I think that's the most important ingredient. And I hope that sheds some light on why there is so much conflicting information around different training styles. And some people passionately are like, you got to train in the 4 to 6 rep range. It's the only way to grow because that's what they've done. And that's what led to growth for them. But I don't think it's so much the 4 to 6 rep range that led to the growth. It's that they found a way to progress the weight and the stimulus on their muscles over time. And then you got another person who's like, no, you have to do 15 reps plus to grow. And both people are huge. This doesn't make any sense, right? You're looking at the surface level details of the training structure and attributing the muscle growth to those things when the underlying ability to progress over time is what actually stimulates the additional growth. To grow your physical body, you must grow your training routine. The weight that you do, the reps that you do, the intensity, maybe the amount of sets, maybe the frequency. You have to find ways to progress it so that you create a more demanding and intense stimulus on the muscle to give it a chance to grow. If you continue to do the same thing over and over, regardless of what rep range, weight, tempo, amount of sets you're in, there's no additional stimulus asking the muscle to grow more. That's just my personal opinion, and I hope that maybe clears up some confusion that I was confused about for a long time. And a lot of that's through my own experimentation and analysis of how my body's responded, so keep that in mind. If you are looking to have a gigantic set of freaking pipe daddies splitting out the sides of your shirts, the ARM program is the number one resource for you to grow your arms. At the end of the day, I give away all my personal advice for free, but if you want a little bit more structure, the ARM program is an absolute asset to help you get more gains if you're serious about growing your arms. So that's it. Thanks for freaking watching. We're completely smoked out here. The forest fires have kicked up, and it's a smoky scene today. Oh, and we're also looking much more aerodynamic, if you didn't notice. Lean and me, a little shorter than I wanted, but it was time to get rid of the fluff. So, yeah, that's that. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. Go make some freaking gains. Peace.